Back to the North Florida Wrestling Show. Man, so they say good things come in threes, and that's certainly true for today's guest. Man's got a new baby, new job, and a new top 10 team ranking. It's the host of this week's Tri-State Series tournament, North Bay Havens, Zane Turinpseed. Zane, welcome back and congratulations, buddy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me. Not a lot of sleep, but a lot of fun.
I bet, man. So tell us about the new baby. Tell us all about it.
Yep. So baby Leia Grace, she is coming up on 2 months old already, which, anybody who's had kids, you know the difference between 0 to 2 months is it hits you so fast. It feels like she's doubled in size. We're real excited to have her, obviously. And it was a big discussion. It's funny talking about it on the wrestling show because even before we decided to have baby number 2, we talked with my wrestling parents and said, this is what we're going to need out of you guys because, your time shrinks. And, even just talking about how we're going to handle practices, tournaments, all that, two on your own is a lot, especially we're trying to get our older one out of diapers. She's getting real close. Number 1 is being successful, just working on the number 2. And, it's all a part of it. I mean, being married to a coach isn't an easy life. I understand that. And, my parents have done a great job picking up the slack in some areas where I needed them to.
Well, the North Florida wrestling community appreciates you building up the female wrestling program, really, really taking it under your wing. So also, congratulations on the new job. You want to go ahead and tell people about that?
Yeah, so assistant athletic director here at North Bay Haven, something that I've been wanting to get into for a long time, got my master's in educational leadership, really trying to get into the athletic side, obviously over the other side of, not that both aren't important, but, my life has been athletics, played sports year round, really see the value. I had plenty of friends that wouldn't have graduated had it not been for wrestling, football, weightlifting, whatever that sport might have been, and just trying to do big things. We have a K-12 setup here at the school, and it's got infinite potential just because of that, keeping kids in your system that long, and being able to recruit them all from, your own campus. You're not having to drive down the road to a middle school. You're not having to put out flyers at an elementary. They're all right there kind of in your pocket. So just trying to get all our sports to lean into that side and hopefully keep kids at home. On top of that, I still do my behavior and discipline. So when kids fight, I'm like, hey, there's a place you can kind of fight and not get in trouble.
I didn't think about that. When you mentioned the discipline, I didn't think that you were angling on something.
Always be angling. It was funny when I first got here, a lot of people don't want to teach 6th graders. And I was like, I absolutely want to recruit kids out of my classroom at the youngest age possible. I'm like, give me the 6th graders. I will snatch them up. And, that's kind of what we're seeing now is those kids are starting to hit freshman and sophomore year.
Dude, I was just thinking about something like that. Like I was, so I'm the new coach over at Niceville High School.
Congrats, by the way.
And appreciate it. And we were trying to get like an in-school duel or something going. And I was like, okay, in high school something. But in places that don't have middle school wrestling, send it over to one of the middle schools. Like let them get up. I was just thinking, I'm like, man, I'd rather get I want to get both of them. But if I can get a kid like a 6th or 7th or 8th grader interested in it then, as opposed to getting some kid like an 11th interested right then, there's more potential on it. But dude, speaking of getting those kids in early and everything, it's obviously paying off because you got a nice brand new top 10 ranking on the Florida Wrestling. Hey. Congrats on that too.
Thank you. And all the coach platitudes about preseason rankings and we got to prove it, we got to earn it. Absolutely true. But for our school, it's huge. It's the first time we've ever been top 10 on anybody's list, probably, for wrestling and most other sports as well. But we're real happy about it. We get a little boost. Got a kid coming in from Washington who was a state champion his sophomore year, runner-up his freshman year. Different state, different size. We'll see how it translates. But, at the same time, we're on the losing end of that too. We lost our heavyweight to Mosley. So you get what you get and, you understand these kids go back and forth. But, yeah, we're real excited about being top 10. Hopefully we can prove it throughout the year that we deserved it.
Well, I want to point out that's on the boys' side, and you're not ranked on the girls' side, but you are putting a lot of work in your girls' program. I've seen a lot of the North Bay Haven girls at these tournaments over the summer. They're putting the work in. I think that it would be very unwise to sleep on North Bay Haven's girls' program this year.
Absolutely. So 2 years ago, I'm looking at I got my lineup on the board, but 2 years ago we had 2 girls. One was inconsistent and even showing up. Last year we were up to 6, and this year we have 12 of our 14 weight classes filled with some backups as well. So we just don't have the last two, the highest two, 190 and 235, and I'm trying, trust me.
For your girls,
But
that's gonna make you a contention in and of itself.
yeah, it's exciting, and most of them are first year wrestlers, but we got some real athletic girls. A lot of them are cross country, they're swim. Some are weightlifting. We're trying to share athletes, but the FHSA for some reason decides girls weightlifting and girls wrestling need to
I
overlap.
know. I don't know why. I like
They got to have the
it's
highest share percentage among girls wrestling. Like the
well,
girls
that's
who
at
are willing to
least
lift.
exactly. Like and when I know there's so many coaches that would be like, "Hey, now that wrestling season's done, go weightlift." Like,
Hmm.
but you could say the same thing could be said for soccer, man. I've lost so many good athletes to soccer.
That's true. That's true.
Damn
Yeah,
soccer,
it's
man.
hard because we're a weird season anyway. Every time somebody's like, "Oh, wrestling's a winter sport," and I'm like, "Eh." I'm like,
It's yeah, kind of like
we
it
kind of
isn't a.
start in November, but then we go all the way through to March. So it's like we overlap with a lot of people, even fall ball with like softball and baseball. We run into, and then boys weightlifting as well is a little later, but it's still hard to share. I mean, it's
Where
you
would
know
you change it up at? Where would you put it at?
it's hard, right? Because you would weightlifting, I know, would want their highest totals, so that's going to be later in the school year, obviously. But I think that if we could start the wrestling season later, I think you could knock the weightlifting out right after football, start wrestling. Then we could get away from winter break. We could get away from Thanksgiving break. All these things where you lose kids. We have a lot of split custody kids that have to go to mom in another state or dad in another state. It's just everybody's always battling with that. So I'd be fine with doing that. And then ideally, they're coming out of weightlifting at the strongest they've been all year, and then boom, hitting the mat.
That
That
would
would
be nice.
be a nice transition. As the other way, not that we condone rapid dehydration or weight loss, but in wrestling, sometimes you're at the leanest you've been, which means your totals are usually taking a little bit of a hit. I think you can maintain, but it's hard. And then you're going into weightlifting, and it's kind of counterintuitive at a lot of times. Yeah, I'd
I,
like to see them go before us, and then I'd love to see wrestling season move back a little bit, actually.
yeah, because I mean that thing's it's nice because it does feel like a winter sport, but it is so hard with those breaks, especially when you're cutting weight too. It's so I mean I'm sure you know as a head coach, and I'm sure I'm going to deal with it enough this year, but trying to come back and fight that that time off and that time around so much food, like it's such a struggle.
Oh yeah. Well, and especially because the weight classes don't line up. So like my old teammate Joel Insminger, shout out, is a two-time weightlifting state champion, and I think three-time qualifier for wrestling. And yeah, it was always a battle because he'd wrestle like 113, but the way the weight classes go for weightlifting would be 119. So he's trying to put on back mass, kids that are cutting to 19 to lift. And yeah, it's interesting to see how those two overlap. I wish there was a little more coordination with them.
Yeah, I know. I mean, but it is what it is. There's so many sports which that's never a bad thing. It's never a bad thing
Absolutely.
that these kids have all these different outlets. But yeah, I see so many different athletes, and I'm just like, man, I wish you would wrestle. Like, just do
Yeah.
it. You'd love it. But
Oh yeah.
it is what it is. So I'm gonna get a little preview on a segment that I'm working on. But so this is my first year being a head coach. I've always tried to stay on the outsides of it because I've seen all the paperwork. But so one head coach to a new one, what one piece of advice would you give to someone starting a program?
Oh, your bookkeeper's your best friend. So whoever your money lady or money person is at your school, that's gonna be your best friend through and through. They're the ones who know that you can't drive a vehicle that has more than 7 passengers in the state of Florida. They're the ones who know, all these little things that can end your coaching career real quick, or at least cause you a lot of drama. They're one of your best friends. They can tell you, what fundraisers have worked for the team in the past, which ones haven't. Because it's as much as we'd love for it to be about wrestling, the head side of it a lot of time is fundraising, logistics, just the legality of different things, planning. It's so much more than just the wrestling. Skip used to always say if it was just about the wrestling, he'd do it forever. You know, uh,
I'm
but
starting to understand that, man, because like even just from what I kind of remember, it seems like in the last like 5, 10 years, there's a ton of more paperwork. There's a ton of more like which, I'm not gonna be one to say whether it's needed or not. I'm about to start going through it, but they
yeah,
have it for certain reasons. But it's a lot. Like it's taking on a responsibility. I'm very lucky that Coach Groft and Coach Hanlon are all we're all kind of tag teaming on it, and it helps, especially with having a girls program. That was another big one, is that there's a lot of coaches doing both. And that's hard, especially as girls wrestling grows and they're going to get their own separate tournaments, or there's going to be like, hey, we can't support this many people at a tournament like it would be. So that's going to be a very, very necessary thing, is growing the amount of women coaches that we have going forward.
Right.
But it's a lot of work, man. I know, and I definitely am excited to learn how to navigate all of it.
I'm excited for you, man. It's a lot of fun. I think the club level is great. One day I think I'd like to sunset into just being a club coach way down the line. But I do think there's a different level of connection sometimes with the official high school season, and but yeah, you're right. I mean, having help with the girls, and for us middle school as well. Last year, I had my helpers for sure. I had my assistants, but I didn't have anybody full time dedicated to a team. So I had my high school boys, I had my middle school boys and girls, and I had my girls team. And it was a lot. I mean, just coordinating it, like you said, trying to find tournaments where maybe there's both. But, this year we're real excited. Coach John Myers, Nick Hake's dad, he's stepping in and running the girls program. His daughter's on our team. Uh, he'll be full time with the girls. That's his sole focus. And then Coach Sam Buatu, who used to wrestle for me, is going to take over my middle school group. So I'm really excited that they're getting the individual attention they deserve, but also, they can go to the tournament that makes more sense for them instead of, sometimes there might be a tournament where there's middle school boys and girls, but it might not be the best fit for the girls, or it might not be the best fit for middle school.
Well, and I want to say how incredibly important, especially in like this area, or from like, Tallahassee kind of over, like being a club coach is incredibly important, because like we don't have, especially now, there's no middle school wrestling in Bay County, Okaloosa County, Walton County, I don't believe. So like, things like this tri-state series that's coming up that you're hosting this weekend, it's giving those kids that are K-8 a chance, an opportunity to compete, and these clubs are giving them something to work at, which is
Yeah.
one reason I'm excited to get into the high school. So, maybe, once you start putting out state champions, state placers like you've been doing over there, that's when you get a lot of like attention. So we're hoping to kind of build it from both ends, because the Niceville Wrestling Academy, they got some kids in there that are going from different places. We got a lot of kids from Okaloosa coming in. It's getting stronger, and there's kids that are wanting to get better and that are focused
Yeah.
on getting better. So I'm excited to see it.
Sorry, I got motion sensor lights, but yeah, no. So, and it's just so important they start young. Sorry, what's that?
You good? Stand up, brother.
Yep. Saving energy, saving the planet, all that good
No.
stuff. But yeah, so, I look at like our lineup real quick, and I look at my kids that I think are on that bubble of being like qualifiers or placers. And it's, outside of one of them, all of them started young. Like Bear's been wrestling since he was a baby. David just started wrestling his freshman year, but had done jujitsu pretty much since he was a toddler. Uh, and I just go through the lineup and they're all like that. I have about 5 or 6 kids I think are bubble qualifiers. And it's hard. It's hard to start in high school unless you're an athletic freak, and get to that level where you can legitimately place or win. It's you just got to start them early, and those who don't start early have to supplement it with that club wrestling in the off season, maybe jujitsu as a cross training to kind of learn their body a little better. But yeah, it's huge. And shout out to the club coaches in the area. They've done a lot better job of. We used to have club coaches, but I think they got to a point where their pride made them think that they needed to be coaching the older levels more so. And I think there's a lot of value in, regardless of what age group you're coaching, building a successful whatever program it is, youth, middle school, or high.
It's challenging at any level, man. Like I honestly will say that I think it's hard to coach the young kids, because you have to explain it in such detail that, there's a lot of these club coaches that especially I see at like these tournaments, and see the kids, and see not only just the level of it, but their interaction with the kids as well. It's like they're doing great jobs, and especially around this area, it's very, very refreshing to see, and it's strong. It's 10 years from now, we got some monsters coming down the pipeline, but it would be nice to get. So that's a question I want to ask. So now that you're in a different position, a little bit higher up, what's the chances of getting middle school wrestling back in Bay County? I know that North Bay Haven has middle schoolers, but what about the rest of Bay County?
So we have a new county AD, and we have a new superintendent. And those were the two positions that were kind of holding it back. Back in the '08 bubble, kind of the storyline with Bay County's middle school. But '08 bubble, financially, they went and cut pretty much everything outside of football, baseball, basketball. And wrestling just wasn't one of them that came back. I think for us to get it back in Bay County, it would really start with, we have ours K-12. Rutherford's now 6-12. Bozeman's K-12. And I think we have one other school that's kind of in that similar setup. And I think that's where you honestly generate it, is if we could start,
Yeah.
if we could get Rutherford's middle school numbers up to where they could almost be individual, and they have a new coach that I know they're excited about too. But if we can get their numbers up and then get Bozeman's up, where they're not relying on them and the varsity team, because that's what we had to do. Was first year of the program that I was here, over half our starters were middle schoolers.
But
And
even
this year,
in that, like that would at least give you the because with dealing with a 6 through 12 team, you run into that. It's like, do I put this sixth grader that's probably not ready to maybe catch a couple forfeits, or a lot of times you'll be like, I'm going to put him in the middle school wrestling where he's still going to get beat up a little bit, but it's a little bit more competitive, and that's like
right.
there's just so many different ways to look at it, but at least like you have that option for those kids to be like, hey, this is a proper growing environment for you.
Yeah. And that's actually where I have beef with the IOF format. So some of their rules with the IO and Florida series is, as soon as they wrestle a varsity high school competition, they're not supposed to be a part of the IOF tournaments. And I think that's such a weird mentality, because if I have a sixth grader, right? So I take Jasper Kroom last year. Jasper Kroom 100% needed to be wrestling high school competition. However, if he wants to compete in IOF one week, if he wants to go down to the state tournament and see, am I the best eighth grader in the state? I think he should be allowed to. I don't know that I would want to be an eighth grade state champion at whatever weight, with the asterisk that, well, thank God Jasper Kroom and some of the Somerset kids weren't allowed to show up. To me personally, I don't want to be that kind of champion. So I get a little frustrated, because we do have kids that are on that bubble where they, can develop in the middle school, but they also are strong enough, or they're in a light enough weight where they can benefit from the high school as well. So I don't know. I think it's wrong for those kids to get kind of punished, just because maybe they did take a few forfeits, or maybe at some of the lighter tournaments they go and compete against ninth graders as an eighth grader. But I do take a lot of beef with IOF on that.
Well, let me ask you about this. What about like middle school? So say that there's a club wrestler in Bay County who's an eighth grader that really wants to, like, he's like, I'm one of the best in the state, period, not just as a middle schooler. Should that kid be able to go FHSA and be like, hey, let me compete in the district tournament?
I think that kid should, if they don't offer it at his school. Oh my gosh. But if they don't offer it at the school, I think they 100% should be allowed to compete somewhere. And
Because
that's something that,
you see kids like, your school, for instance, like you can have a sixth grader, seventh grader be like, hey, I'm about to go win 6 state championships, or have that opportunity at it. Like, I know
yeah.
for me at Surfside, I'd been like, my eighth grade year, I'd have been like, yeah, you can throw me against them high schoolers. We'll see how it goes.
See, I wouldn't have been ready. I was like 80 pounds soaking wet. But, I think they should. And, I know when I was at South Walton, they have a setup to where one of their charter middle schools could do that. They could come over and compete at the high school. It was kind of based off the county's rules. We have a harder time doing it here, but no, I think I'm way more open on things in general, almost that kind of libertarian in the world of wrestling of, if your school doesn't offer wrestling, you should be able to go here. I think if you're homeschooled, and you see this happen some places, but other districts fight it. I think if I'm homeschooled and I want to play baseball at Mosley, and I want to play football at Bozeman, and I want to wrestle at North Bay Haven, I think that's your right. I mean, I just think that, I don't know, I'm pretty open on what kids should be able to do, because you should be able to go to the program that you think is best for you. At the end of the day, if it's about the kid and their development and being the best they can be, if you're a school that's mad, like, oh, he's playing football here, but he's not wrestling here, you just got to get your program up. You got
Well,
to
and
prove
especially if his
that.
academics are fine, that's the most important part. If like you have a kid that's
Yes.
like, hey, I'm homeschooled and I have like I'm scoring XXX on the SATs or whatever, it's like, all right, you can do your extracurriculars. That'll be just fine.
Right. Yeah. And even having like, oh my gosh, even having like higher standards for some of that. What in the world? Yeah. I wouldn't be against that either. If they can prove that they're still testing at the right rate. Because it's, just like anything, things get abused by people. Like, oh yeah, this sounds like a great idea. And then it turns into somebody's like, taking a private jet from Miami to Tampa to be on two
Well,
different teams.
it's so much different than like I know you and I are like close, pretty close on like generation, like one generation away from like in like the terms of like a wrestling cycle.
Yep.
Like, but it's just changed so much since like I was a kid and like you see like because I remember all of us just rushing to see like the FloridaVarsity.com to see like who was getting talked about on the forums, and now it's just the whole there's like like official rankings, like it's podcast about it, shows. It's ridiculous. It's a
There-
whole different world, and like both good and bad, really,
yeah.
honestly. Like, because there's
I-
definitely like some parts about it what's like, all right, that's progressed and probably different and bad, the like a not so productive direction. But then there's some where it's like, all right, this really makes the kids feel special, or like there's different things that are like, oh, this adds a little bit of gravitas to what little sport that we're doing.
Right. Well, and I think one of the benefits that you say, but also you lose some fun with it. I like a little bit of chaos, but without the anonymous side of that message board,
Yeah, yeah. I
old
remember
rivals. The anonymous side let some wild things come out, and it
you
generated some
could you could usually figure out who there was. Like it was pretty small, so it was like you could figure out who it was and be like, "Come on now, what's going on, dude?"
fun.
But I got to get my kid to school in a second. But are you gonna?
Yep.
I'm assuming you're gonna be at the tournament this weekend, right?
Yep. So we have our tournament here Saturday. We're getting the mats tonight, setting up tomorrow. I know we're north of 100 people. I know the hurricane really made that hard for some. Like I know I saw Crowder shout out. Was mentioning that they're on a generator, might not have power for 7 days. So my heart's
Yeah,
out to those people. We here in Bay County went through Michael a number of years ago now, and it was just brutal to the programs and athletics. And
yeah. Well, I
so
mean, Jason, one of the director, he was like feeling, he's like, man, I feel bad for Zane. I'm like, dude, he's a Florida. He knows hurricanes mess things up,
yep.
dude. We 100% know that. Like
Oh
sometimes you
yeah.
just gotta be like, a hurricane happens, dude.
Yep. So we'll still take whoever's coming. We're absolutely excited to have them. Maybe they can get away for a minute, come over, wrestle, to go to Pier Park, have a nice time. Our weather's been beautiful because it's sucking up all the bad stuff the other way. But yeah, excited to have it. We got a lot of youth. I saw you registered for the adult division,
Yeah, I was say, what you
uh,
weighing?
more than you. And so, I always say, I joke, I'm like, I have to preserve myself to wrestle David Mercado. If I get hurt, there goes his partner. So. But yeah, it's shout out to Jason too. I know he hurt his shoulder real bad, but at least he stepped out there and man, he wrestled nice. I hadn't seen Jason move like that, but he was scrambling, he was getting funky with it.
That's what I
Like
told
the
him. I was
kid
like, he went into retirement a champion. I was like, that's the way to go out, dude.
the kids were getting hype for him. But I
I
love it.
know.
We've talked about it before. I think it's great for them to see you go out there and even if they see it in the room, competition against a stranger is always something
It's
different. So
different. And then like, because they're like, oh, I did that. It's a lot. It's a varied for, I mean, everybody, all of us have been through it that were wrestlers. Like so
yep.
then when you see, because like I know Coach Landon did that and it was the coolest thing ever. It was like, I still remember, I've had tons of wrestling memories, but that one like sticks out because it's like, oh, that was, my coach going out there putting it on the line. Which another thing too, I think I noticed that there was a lot of like younger kids there as well, or
Yeah.
adults. Not I say kids like I'm too super old, but like 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds. I
They
think
are
stuff like
kids, they are kids.
I think stuff like this is going to keep them in it, and then you'll start seeing like some of these brackets be like, oh, there's like a legit, 8-10 man bracket just for like 30 and under, or like 25 and under for some of these things, which will just make it that much more cooler for these younger kids, like elementary, middle school kids. Be like, oh, those are like a 20-year-old college kids wrestling over there, or that kid
Yeah.
used to wrestle in college, or those two used to wrestle in college, and like it just continues to build, the sport, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and like you said, it's I think you get some efficacy with your kids too when I go out there on the mat. I'm rolling and I'm moving and it's intense and it's live. And then, when you go to teach your kids, I think you got a little more cred if you're willing to go out there and do it yourself and show them, hey, I can still move. I can still, I can't always go 100% against a kid, but I can be pretty physical. I can be tough.
Well, see, my secret is I let them beat me sometimes, so when it actually happens, that they don't really know it. It's just like
Yeah,
the only person that knows it, and then I feel it.
that's what I've been doing with David for years. Just
Yeah,
giving him
it's
some
like
points here and there, build that
yeah, it's like
confidence.
you're getting a lot better. You'll beat me one day, and like you're just like, God damn, this kid's a monster.
I go home upset. You can ask Shay sometimes. I'll be like, I didn't score a single dang takedown today. Da, 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 da. Like, So you still got that competitiveness in you, no matter how old you get, and as long as you keep rolling on the mat. That's what all the old coaches always told me. Was if you just don't stop, you can go forever. So that's
Yeah.
the hope.
Well, it's different too, because like for me at least, I come back and I'm sitting there and I'll be talking to like my partner. I'm like, did you see how he just beat the I like just like took it to me? Like I'm like sitting there amazed at it. But
Yep.
I know you gotta get. I got work to do. Yeah. Before we head out of here, you got any parting words for the North Florida wrestling fans?
Hey y'all, make sure you subscribe, like everything else that you need to do. Keep growing wrestling. It's things like this that are big. It's not just the tournaments, it's not just the, social media posts. We always talk about wanting more coverage. Jordan's out here doing it, so support him. Stay on the mat, keep wrestling. And I do have one little message because I see this every now and then. And I saw a post that I liked of, just wrestle. If you're on the edge of wrestling, if you're a young kid and you're like, oh, I might do it next year, you're always going to regret that you didn't do it the year before that. So many kids I have start wrestling sophomore year go, man, coach, I wish I'd have done it freshman year when you had to talk to me. If you're on the fence about wrestling and you've done it a year or two and now you got the ability to drive or you got a job or, you got a significant other and that starts becoming a more large focus, just you have a few years where you can really compete and really be the best you could be and enjoy them. I mean, you got the rest of your life to work a job. You got the rest of your life to find love and do all those things. Like, just enjoy these years because they're over before you know it. I remember, when David came in as a freshman, I was like, oh yeah, I got 4 years with this kid. I got all this time. And man, it's almost heartbreaking seeing him as a senior right now, just kind of, treading along knowing that we're only a few months away from being done with his high school career. So just enjoy it while it lasts. All the old people will tell you this and you won't listen, but it goes faster the older you get.
Facts, baby. That is definite facts, man. Well, I appreciate you getting up and talking to me early this morning, man. I will see you this weekend at the tournament, and I hope I see all of y'all at the tournament as well. If you are about 160, 170 pounds and over 18, man, hop in there. I'm trying to get some action.